Hello my friends and welcome, my name is Dennis and this is the latest update from Ukraine. Pope Francis said that Ukraine should raise a white flag and surrender. We have the information about it from the Reuters source and also from the Telegraph. We know that in 2022 Pope already called for some sort of the peace agreements between Ukraine and Russia. By that time he played for the Russian side. And here is the same picture. His idea is basically for Ukraine to capitulate to avoid the casualties of the war and let Putin to occupy the vast territories of Ukraine and also implementing his culture on the other Ukrainian territories. Without any casualties, but Russia should occupy Ukraine peacefully. More or less like Russia did in Crimea, killing just 2 of the Ukrainian soldiers. You might think that it was wrongly said by Pope, it was misunderstanding, or it was a misjudgment of the situation, but no, Pope Francis said it on purpose. Just remember what happened lately. Erdogan and President Zelensky meeting about peace agreements. Erdogan calls Russia to join the peace conference. At the same time, President Zelensky is against it. However, he didn't exclude it completely. Also, the last week, the Chinese representative Li Hui visited Moscow, Ukraine, and many of the European countries, pushing the same narratives as Pope Francis announced today. Ukraine should agree with Russian demands and call for the peace, waving the white flag, otherwise it will be destroyed. Russia is forcing Ukraine and the Western countries for some sort of the agreement because Russian army is kind of tired. They lose quite a lot of the soldiers per day, but they've took some of the territories under their control and now they want to say that they will move ahead even further. They will break Ukrainian defense. So Ukraine, please stop fighting and let's speak. If Ukraine agrees for this scenario, in the best case, everything will be freezed for quite a long time. But in around 2-3 years, Russia will attack again. Before the second full-scale attack, Russia would try to implement their culture in Ukraine, their intelligence services, their spies. They would spread the Russian peace narratives among Ukrainians too. Yes, mostly now Ukrainian people do hate the Russian peace and all of their ideology. But you know, the same stuff happened with Chechnya. At first they hated Russians, but later on Russia put their own man there and they gave the full power to a single clan, Kadyrov clan, which played the Russian violin in Chechnya, providing their influence. And now Chechens are fighting for Russia in Ukraine. I'm personally afraid that the same stuff might happen to Ukraine, and Russia will force Ukrainians to fight on their side. It already happened many times in our human history. That's why I think that the French leader is so concerned about the case. So all of the global south countries, including China, some of the African countries, some of the Arab countries, Turkey, are forcing Ukraine for peace. Brazil too, by the way. But we all understand what might happen in that case. Ukraine might be lost forever. It might stay on the map, but it would look like Belarus right now. That is just playing the role of the independent country. But actually it's one more oblast of Russia nowadays. Russia even deployed the nukes out there and used Belarus territory for their army as they want. So that state is independent just on the paper. The good thing that Ukraine knows all of this stuff and will not sign any kind of the peace agreements with Russia, at least for now. Now the peace deal means surrender. And instead of calling Ukraine to give up, Pope Francis should call Russia to withdraw their forces from Ukraine. Only that might bring peace. Guys, and this question has nothing to do with religion. It is just a Pope Francis. He represents a religion. He's quite famous, yes, but he's not speaking on behalf of Jesus Christ. No, those are his own thoughts. Here we separate persons and religion. Alright guys, now let's go to the frontlines review. This is the Bakhmut area. This is the Bakhmut city itself. The heavy fights are ongoing in Ivanovsk. Russia is unable to get more ground under control as well as in Bogdanivka, but the fights are really strong out there. During the evening time, our soldiers already reported that Russia ceased all of the attacks. So they have some sort of the break, probably collecting more forces. But from what I can see, the Russian advancement slowed down gradually and they're unable to take as much ground as before. In Tanenka near to Avdiivka, the situation is like that. The Avdiivka, by the way, in that direction. So Russia attacked Tanenka and took this part under their control, but Ukraine was able to get forces out from the place at the proper time. There were no reports about any sort of the encirclement of Ukrainian soldiers in the place, from the Russian side by the way too. Although Russia took this village under control, but they are still unable to proceed forward as they used to go before after taking Avdiivka. They are now exhausted. At the same time, Ukraine sends more reinforcements for defense of the region, simultaneously building more defense lines across the river. On the south, in Verboa and Robotina, Russia has 3 of the major assault vectors. This vector failed for them recently, and here they're unable to get to Robotina too. as well as from Novoprokopivka direction, so the defense of Ukraine here is kind of the robust, but in general Russia doesn't have significant losses in this area, but they had those near to Verbovo in this direction. This Russian attack was totally ambushed. Today it was more or less calm in this place. Maybe the Russian side is regrouping their forces. This is the situation in Krinky. All of this area is under Ukrainian control. Russia has 3 of the attack vectors. The Russian Defense Minister Shoigu has already reported that they've took Krinky under their control. But somehow Ukraine is still present there. Moreover, we have some of the news that Ukraine was able to expand this bridgehead a little. But at what direction, over here, here or here, I'm out of clue. We just have the report about it, mostly from the Russian military bloggers. Can we believe them? Well, usually when they run away, it's truth. As you see, there are no big changes on the front lines. After all, after Russia took Avdiivka, they are out of breath to continue the further movement. I mean, in a high pace. That is why they called their friends like Pope Francis, like Turkish president or others to push Ukraine for negotiations. Probably you know that there was the airstrike on many of the Russian facilities yesterday. Russia reported about 47 of the drones which targeted their infrastructure. Obviously, Russians were able to shut down some of the Ukrainian drones, but still there were some of the ground kabooms reported. Like for example in this hangar of the Russian military airfield in Taganrog. But honestly saying, my friends, we do not have the robust evidence that this airfield or this hangar was targeted. We have this image and this one. I think that is basically the same image that was blurred with some of the black spot. I can Photoshop this in 5 seconds. I do not see that this image is new because the shadows are the same. Everything is basically the same. Then you see the different image, you see different shadows. Some of the elements are different, but not over here. Here everything is the same. So far we have the report about the case from a single Ukrainian MP, which is not a reliable source, I may say. So he says that inside there is the Russian airplane AVAX A-50, which wasn't going through the maintenance procedure and also some of the upgrade. He says that Russia lost this airplane, but again there are no official reports from Ukrainian or Russian sides. So I wouldn't trust this information for now, but hopefully it is truth. The New York Times came out with an article about the Russian advancement on the east. They said what I just said to you, the intensity of the Russian attack dropped significantly. However, Russia still holds some of the initiative and they are able to get some of the ground, but just small portions of it. Ukraine has sent its best forces to Avdiivka direction to stop a Russian attack. Ukrainian army even used the Abrams tanks and already lost 3 of them. But it is war, what can we do? At the same time, the New York Times says that without the military support from the United States, the situation for Ukraine might get worse. But if we speak about the losses for Russia, the situation is the worst possible. In February and March, Russian losses are the highest since the beginning of the war. It is just crazy, and the Russian command, as you can see, is goal-oriented. They've took Avdiivka and Putin has something to be proud of, probably. And now we see the result of some of the defense lines constructions performed by Ukraine. This image was taken by the Russian surveillance drone. Well, this defense line is more or less robust. Also, Ukraine built some of the lines near to Dnipro city in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, just in case there are dragon teeth, plus the trenches. And we have the bad news about the Patriot system. This video was shared by the Russian military bloggers. As you can see, they dropped the aviation bomb out there, the gliding bomb. Probably 1500, completely demolishing the area. At first they were confused about what kind of the systems out there. They say that it's S-300, but later on the next images show that it is definitely a Patriot system. We may see it over here, it's the cockpit or the cabin of the vehicle. It is not a Photoshop because the image is moving, so I believe it's the real image from the place. Definitely Ukraine lost not the Patriot system, but many of the Patriot launchers, at least 2 of them, maybe even 3. I zoomed the image of this cabin for you to see, so definitely we can see that it goes over here, it's the door. The same door goes over here in the Patriot system. The same shape, let's say, and on the top there is some ventilation or air condition, and it's also present over here. The lengths and everything, all of the dimensions are very similar to the Patriot. So I personally give 99% that Ukraine lost Patriot systems. Strangely, but those kind of the big news were shared just by few of the pro-Ukrainian channels or media sources. Ukraine is definitely calm about it, that's why I'm also checking the Russian side too, and they provide the evidence sometimes. that's why I'm sharing them also on my channel. We need to understand the full picture. If I share the bad news, it doesn't mean that I'm anti-Ukrainian. No, I'm here for analysis of the situation. That is what I do. So how was it possible why Ukraine lost those systems out there? I think that Russia knew the position of the Patriot systems. They're not flying their drones randomly. It would be a surprise for them if they would able to find the systems. So there is the possibility that there is some sort of the rat in Ukrainian command. As in every war, because after Russia started to lose many of the airplanes, this start successfully hit the Ukrainian air defense systems plus radars. And here, as you can see, Ukraine lost 3 of the launchers. After I watched this video, clearly it's like that. The launchers are not that expensive as radars, for example, but still Ukraine needs those. This Ukrainian convoy was ambushed near to Pokrovsk, which is not far away from Donetsk, really close to the front lines. How many kilometers? 34, almost 35. Deploying the Patriot system so close to the front lines, Ukraine was obviously a risk. I've told you about it in my previous videos, and then we were speaking about the downed Russian planes. So yes, Ukraine is successful, but there is a huge risk for the Patriots. And now we see that the risk is real. It even turned into disaster, because after this huge explosion, obviously there were some of the casualties. After this, I don't think that Ukraine will continue to use Patriot systems close to the front lines and will concentrate on defending the cities. The only option for Ukraine to cope with the Russian aviation now is to wait for F-16s and to use them. But they're coming this summer. It means that for the next few months, Russia will continue to use their aviation effectively. Yeah, sometimes shit happens. This is the British Challenger 2 tank of Ukrainian army. It's stuck in the mud. At some point, the field roads are still unusable. This is the report for the vehicle losses for the last 3 days. Russia lost 207 of the vehicles, Ukraine 52. It's been confirmed that Ukraine lost 1 HIMARS. You see that Russia is using their Lancet drones very effectively against fat targets of Ukrainian army like Archer or Vampire. Luckily, Archer was just damaged, will be repaired. So Russia has 2 of the advantages over Ukraine: Lancet drones and also aviation gliding bombs. But Ukraine has a big advantage using FPV drones. Many of those were used against the Russian supply vehicles, against Russian tanks, armored vehicles, and many more. In 2022, the United States intelligence really thought that Russia might strike Ukraine using nukes. We have the report about it from CNN. They rely on the sources in the United States intelligence and military. The attack could have happened in the late 2022. Then Ukraine started to gain lots of the territories back, especially in Kharkiv Oblast, and also advancing to Kherson. And just remember, at the same time Russia started to tell about some sort of the dirty bomb, they were preparing the media field to strike Ukraine with nukes. In the Russian propaganda, it should have been a response to the attack from Ukrainian side with some sort of the dirty bomb. And after a while, they went totally silent about this dirty bomb because they decided not to use the nukes for that time. But I do not exclude that scenario. France is now creating a coalition with the Baltic countries to deploy the forces in Ukraine. As France says, for now, the soldiers will just demine the areas in Ukraine, but it's just a start as for me. The French officials say that they will do everything to secure France and its allies. They do not care about the Russian red lines, and it's the proper attitude. And those allies who say that Ukraine should wave the white flag get lost. Learn from Macron. The Telegraph says that European diplomats are getting ready for America to withdraw from NATO alliance in case Trump would be elected as the next president. Well, it's hard to say whether it's true or not, but Trump said about it that the United States should not be in NATO alliance. He said about it at least 2 of the times during this campaign, and a single time that he was a United States president. He even spoke about this issue with Merkel, who was the Chancellor of Germany. Well, if the United States retreat from NATO, Putin will attack NATO. It's 100%. The Baltic countries, Poland, yeah, be ready. However, at the same time, it's really hard to predict what might happen in the future. It's even hard to tell who wins the elections and what Donald Trump might do after all. But NATO is not NATO without the United States. The Republicans from the House of Representatives are issuing their own bill about the support for Ukraine. Right at the same time, then the actual bill for the military support is ready. Just vote for it. Well, I'll say more about it on my other YouTube channel dedicated to the international events and politics in the United States. See you there as well. My friends, now don't forget to press your huge like to this video. By doing so, you help me a lot. And also, if you want to support my job, you may check out some of the links in the video description just below. You may support me on Patreon or just on the sponsorship of this YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your kind support. My friends, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.